The third film in the Creed trilogy drops in theaters very soon. This is the first movie in the Rocky franchise without any involvement from Sylvester Stallone. I've seen it, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Let me know your excitement level for Creed 3 and your thoughts on the entire Sylvester Stallone situation. I got chapter markers down below if you want to skip ahead to a specific discussion in this review, in particular discussion about the behind-the-scenes Sylvester Stallone drama, as well as my feelings on, does the movie have a Sylvester Stallone Rocky-shaped hole in it? With that said, let's get started with the good. And when it comes to the Rocky Creed franchise, there's a limited number of directions that you can take these stories that feel plausible and they make sense. And what I mean by that is when it comes to a boxing match, you either win or you lose. You go into it the underdog or you go into it the champ. And there's only so many ways you can mix up that set of ingredients. And I feel like this movie found kind of a new angle to take the series. And it found something unique and different about Adonis and his backstory of being kind of a troubled youth, something that was just kind of introduced lightly in the first film, and it fleshes that out. The relationships that came with it, the baggage that comes with it, and plays that out where he is in life after the previous two films in this franchise. And in doing so, it just has a very different vibe to it than any other Rocky or Creed film. And I say that is very much a good thing. It's a different type of story that feels entirely consistent with what has come before. Along those same lines, Jonathan Majors is a force to be reckoned with. He kind of came out of nowhere over the last couple of years, and in a very short window of time is now the villain in an MCU film and is going to be the big bad of the MCU for the next several years. And now he's this great antagonist in a Rocky Creed film. And what's so great about the character is that the movie spends a lot more time with him. Probably not since Apollo Creed have we gotten to know an antagonist in one of these movies as well as we've gotten to know him, what makes him tick, why does he have a chip on his shoulder. It kind of gives him his own journey and arc throughout the film. And what's so good about Jonathan Majors is that he is just kind of this physically intimidating specimen. Like, he's a big, jacked dude. But beyond that, he's able to be very sympathetic with his performances, with his face and the way he emotes. And then he can be terrifying too, and kind of weave both of those together at the same time. It's a lot of what I said about his performance in Kang, though this character does not at all come off like Kang as a boxer, but he is very versatile. He's able to pull off a lot of different emotions and seamlessly pull them together into a character that feels like a well-rounded person. And even as you watch the film, you can understand why he really feels burned by the world. Why is he doing what he's doing the way that he's doing it? Well, if you're someone that lived his life and had his backstory, it would make sense that you would come out the way that he does, behave the way that he does in this film. And in particular, Jonathan Majors, I think, is a big part of why that works. Other big thing to talk about here in the good, Michael B. Jordan directed the film, and of all the films in this entire franchise, all 9 films, this is easily the one that has the most distinct style to it. Michael B. Jordan didn't just try and rip off Ryan Coogler. He brought his own ideas and distinct style to the movie, and I appreciated that about the film. In particular, when it comes to the fight choreography and the way the fights are shot, he did something new and different. Before the movie came out, well, I guess the movie hasn't even come out, but prior to me seeing the movie, he did interviews where he talked about bringing in some stylistic choices from anime into the fights and the way they're choreographed. There's some super slow motion in there. There's even some stuff that really kind of gets artistic in the way that it visualizes. Well, with all of the good Rocky movies, Creed movies, the fights are usually meant to be essentially a metaphor for what's going on inside the characters, that they're working out something on the inside, and the boxing match is a metaphor for that. And this movie, certainly in the final sequence, takes that to a whole other level. And I appreciated what he did in those situations, where he kind of took things. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the mixed section. I have more to say about that. I would say I appreciated that he actually took a shot, tried something different, and brought some new ideas into how the fights are captured, in particular as this is a franchise that is nearing 50 years old and doing something a little bit different. I am game for it. Final big thing to talk about in the good section is that it's, as I mentioned, it's a different type of story. It's also a different type of storytelling, where previously it's pretty straightforward what exactly is going on here. Clubber Lang is a jerk. He's a bad guy. Adonis wants to make a name for himself, and he wants to be a boxer, so he seeks out Rocky. It's like very straightforward what's going on. The Dragos are out to win it. This movie changes up the formula a little bit, where it's pretty unclear exactly what Jonathan Major's character is up to. And you know there's probably more going on here, since it's not going to end well, but there's some mystery and intrigue surrounding him. So very much the same way that the fights have a little bit more style to them, the story has kind of more intrigue and like actual twists, turns, and reveals in it. There's just kind of a new flavor for this particular franchise. And big picture, it continues to kind of capture this vibe of seeing these characters throughout different phases of life. Of course, they did that with Rocky. Here they're doing it with Adonis. And, you know, very much like the last movie came out 5 years ago or whatever, this movie takes place a number of years in the future. And so it's kind of playing out where he's at in his marriage, with having a baby that's no longer a baby anymore, and you're seeing him grow and change and be a very different person from who he was originally. It plays out all of this, and I just enjoy seeing that. As much as they are sports movies, boxing movies, they're also about characters, and I feel all along the way the Rocky Creed films have done a good job of showing life and showing characters in different phases of life. So there's a lot in here that I thoroughly enjoyed. Certain elements that really make this movie pop inside of both the Creed trilogy or the Rocky franchise as a whole. There's a lot more to talk about here as well. So let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. And the first one that comes to mind is what I referenced before about the way the fights are choreographed. They're so stylized, they will be off-putting to some people. That when you have a series of movies that, you know, sometimes they got ridiculous in how many headshots these guys can take and things like that, but it was all played straight. Camera in the room filming what's taking place. And even when it kind of goes into slow-mo, a lot of it times it's to show kind of the dazed nature of the characters. This is just stylized fighting. Whether the nature of the shots, graphics, zoom in on the eyes, ultra slow-mo, or there's one part in the final fight that just goes full metaphoric. Some people won't like that. I know one guy I would talk to, it took him clean out of the movie and it removed any sort of emotional stakes because it just felt too stylized. He said it was well done, but just too stylized. So keep that in mind as you go into it. Some of you will love what they do with the fights. Some of you will really not like what they did. Other big thing you got to talk about here is the absence of Stallone. This franchise was invented by Sylvester Stallone. It's the Rocky franchise. This is a spinoff, and we have a movie that Rocky's not in and that Stallone had no part in, and has been pretty outspoken about the fact that he's not going to watch it, and he has big, gigantic issues with the producer. So for some of you, you immediately kind of hear that and go, I don't want to watch a Rocky movie that Stallone is not involved with. And I understand that. I think that there's a certain degree to which that's fair. I'll talk about the controversy in just a second, but just in terms of, did I feel like there was a Rocky-shaped hole in this film? And I would say no, I didn't. I felt this movie worked on its own terms with the characters that are there, and it's a follow-up to Creed 2, which ended with Rocky going to go and reconcile with his son, moving on. And this movie takes place years later, where Adonis is in a very different place in his career. He lives in a different place. And I don't know how Rocky would serve this story. This story is not about Adonis's rise. It's about successful Adonis dealing with his past, and someone from his past way pre-Rocky coming back. And one of the reasons that Jonathan Major's character works is because he was given so much time. And if you put Rocky in there, you can't just sprinkle Rocky into one of these movies. You can't just give him a cameo. He's too important. You can't turn Rocky into Duke. I love the character of Duke in Rocky 1 through 6. Just love that character as kind of this side character that trained Apollo, then Rocky. Even just love the fact that that's the arc that took place. And then the Creed movies continue on with his son taking over as Adonis's trainer. But Rocky is not Duke. And Rocky is just too potent that you can't just sprinkle him in the movie. And Rocky doesn't really serve this story. So if you put him in there, you just have to try and steal time from something else to give Rocky something to do. I feel like it made sense that he's not in the film. On terms like a story level, where the characters are at. Would I have loved to have heard more about what Rocky's been up to or something to like bridge that? Yes, I would have. I feel like they needed to say a bit more about what Rocky's up to and acknowledge him a bit more in the film. Did he need to really be in the film? I don't think so. I think with this story, it's a story about Adonis and this person from his childhood. That's what this is about. And on that level, I think it worked for me. Other thing you have to talk about in terms to Stallone is that his lack of involvement is personal.
Do you feel like I can never watch Creed 3 kind of thing?
Never.
He feels like the producer, Irwin Winkler, stole the Rocky franchise from him. That despite the fact that it's his creation, he's the one that starred in it, wrote in it, directed most of the movies. Despite all of that, this producer controls his baby, and Stallone wants to leave it to his children, and this other guy is running with it and doing whatever he wants with it. And I would assume at some point in time, Rocky said, I don't want you to do this, or I want to do this. And Winkler said, no. And Stallone, being Stallone, probably rightfully was like, why are you telling me? Who are you to tell Rocky no about what to do with the Rocky franchise? I don't know the specifics of it. All I know is Stallone has very publicly been critical of the producer. There was two Instagram posts made by Frank Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's brother, back in May of last year, where he went off on Creed 3. It did make disparaging comments about Michael B. Jordan, and it was just kind of an angry rant. And one of those two posts was liked by Sylvester Stallone. Frank Stallone posted them, disparaging about the producer, Michael B. Jordan, Creed 3 as a whole. Stallone liked one of them, and they were deleted shortly afterwards, but they were made. More recently, during promotion for Tulsa King, Stallone discussed his issues with Creed 3, and he said, my issue is with Irwin Winkler. That guy is a snake that stole Rocky from me. I like Michael B. Jordan. He's talented.
Michael B. Jordan, nice guy. The studio is wonderful.
I would do Creed 4 with him if the producer's out.
Now, if Michael B. Jordan, we come up with a story, I'll do Creed 4 with him as long as the other fella's not involved.
And then this week, the week that press screenings are happening for Creed 3, that the movie comes out next week, on his Instagram, Stallone posted, here's what I started working on for Rocky 7. I wanted to do Rocky 7, and this producer stole the franchise from me, and he's doing whatever he wants with the characters that I created.
Quick update, while editing this video, came to my attention that Stallone has deleted the Instagram post about Rocky 7. Apparently someone called him up and was not very happy that he was talking about Rocky 7 right before Creed 3 comes out.
Make of that as you will. If you feel like they have mistreated Stallone, stolen Rocky from him, so you don't want to go see Creed, I understand where you're coming from. I don't see it entirely that way. I don't feel entirely that way about it, but I understand it at the same time. From there, let's move on to the bad. And when it comes to this movie, I walked out of the theater feeling better about it than I did after my car ride home. Like, with a little bit of time thinking about it, processing it, I was like, it wasn't quite as good as I hoped it was. There was a few things there that just didn't quite work for me. It was frustrating because it did evoke those big emotions that I wanted. It changed things up to feel just fresh enough for me. There was like, I like that. That's nice. But at the same time, when I stopped to think about it, I went, oh, that doesn't quite add up. I wish that had more time spent on it. So what I mean specifically by that, first thing that comes to mind here is that the movie feels like it moves at one pace for the first 2/3 when it's establishing the characters in conflict, and then it just radically changes tempo as soon as you get moving to that final third of the movie. It's like one scene happens, one line of dialogue happens, and we're rushing to the finale now. And it felt like certain things weren't earned. It felt like maybe some time was cut out of the film right there. Like it was something was missing that would have fleshed things out. Even the involvement of specific characters, the amount they're in, so much of it changes dramatically at a certain point in time. There's certain things I wanted more information about around that 2/3 mark of the film, and it just kind of goes off in other directions. Other big one here, there's a major plot point in the film about why the story's able to play out and why certain scenarios happen the way that they happen in the movie. Just absolutely cheats the plot point. What I mean by that, because I don't want to go too far into it because it's spoilers, but like there's a plot point where they do something where as soon as you stop to think about if this happened in real life, if this really happened, what would it really mean? How would you actually respond? And you would not do what the characters in this movie do. You would do something entirely different. And that's a problem when you just immediately go, this doesn't make sense. You have this extravagant wild thing happening and it's entirely being set up by this contrived movie thing. And if you're in like a less serious film that's not as grounded, you can get away with this sort of like loosey-goosey with how reality really works. If you want people to buy into the reality of your fairly grounded film, you can't just have these sorts of excuses for major plot points that drive everything forward. You have to have something better there. And another one in here, as much as it tries to be original with what kind of takes place with everything, there's still a certain familiarity to certain beats. Once again, you can win or you can lose. When you're going through phases of life, you get married, you have kids, life, death. Like there's only so many big things that can happen. So you start to feel certain familiarities with other films in either a Rocky movie, another thing that happened in a Creed film. And I think there's a little bit of that in here. It can be a little bit, it tackles a few too many things of life. Like they don't fully know what to do with Adonis's daughter. So they give her a little bit of stuff, but it doesn't actually kind of pay off at the end. It doesn't tie in some meaningful way. And some of the returning characters, I don't want to say too much about them, but some of the people that they brought back from other movies, I liked the idea of them being there. I liked the idea of how they're being used. but they're underused. It's like if you're going to do that, I think it should pay off a little bit more, have a little bit more weight to it than just, hey, look who it is. So in general, a movie that I wanted to like more than I did, and I walked out of the theater liking it more than I liked it by the time I got home, but I still really liked this film. Real quick, before I give you my final thoughts, let me know what you're thinking down below in the comments section, especially about all of that drama with Sylvester Stallone. Also, I'll be doing a bunch of Rocky Creed rankings as soon as this movie comes out. I want to explore it from all the different directions because this is one of my absolute favorite franchises, and I have thoughts on about all of the villains, all of the montages, all that fun stuff. So that is coming as soon as the movie comes out. In the end, Creed 3 is another solid addition to the franchise. It has one of the absolute best antagonists of all 9 films with one of the more fleshed out backstories. It does some interesting things with the storytelling. Some of the fight choreography is done in a far more stylized, interesting way than it's ever been done before. But there is a little bit of uncomfortability in light of what went down with Sylvester Stallone. They did cheat some plot points, and there are elements that felt rushed in the final project. So not quite as great as I'd hoped, but there are some great things in here. Overall, I'm gonna give it a B- on the entertainment scale and 8 out of 10. And if you're a Rocky Creed fan, you should check this movie out. Just know Rocky's not in it, and that might hurt your experience with the film, and there are some artistic choices which won't work for some of you. Check out that video right over there where I talk about why I love the original Rocky film and why Rocky Balboa is my favorite movie character of all time. Thank you so much for watching. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.